Good morning, Wabash. Speaking today at Pioneer Chapel is alumnus Scott By with his talk titled, Shut Up and Listen. Scott, better known around campus as Scotty B, graduated from Wabash in the class of 2019 with a major in financial mathematics and a minor in Spanish. While at Wabash, Scotty B was a brother of Kappa Sigma, a member of the Sphinx Club, and an undergrad assistant coach on the soccer team after concussions ended his playing career. Scotty B is a proud winner and named MVP of the 27 Pan-Hellenic Games currently at Wabash College. Now, he works for Charles Schwab in Knoxville, Tennessee, is an associate financial consultant, and is studying to obtain his certified financial planner designation. Please join me in welcoming our speaker.
Good morning and buenos dias, Wabash. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Gonzo and the Sphinx Club for the opportunity to come back to campus today and take part in this time-honored tradition. When you reached out to me, Gonzo, back in April, I was thrilled to get the invite and told you to name the date, and I would make it work. Because this is my favorite tradition that Wabash College has to offer, although Pan-Hell does come in a very close second. I would also like to thank my parents, Madre and Padre, for all the support that they give me and love that they give me. Wouldn't be here without you. Now back on September 9th, Teddy, who's probably one of the coolest people that I ever had the opportunity to meet while at Wabash, gave a chapel talk. And in his parting words, he gave a call to action where he encouraged everyone to take a step back in their own lives and lend an ear to one another. My message today aims to echo that very same call to action, and I hope that you all have that same takeaway. I'm going to start off with a brief background of how I ended up where I am and doing what I'm doing as an associate financial consultant at Charles Schwab in Knoxville. Then I'm going to try to bring it all home with 3 distinct stories or memories, lessons that I learned from my time at Wabash, and try to tie everything together full circle on how my experiences thus far and those memories and lessons that I took away from my time at Wabash taught me when to shut up and listen, but also taught me when it's my time to be heard. We hear all the time about how males are scared to speak up or too embarrassed to ask for help, so I hope my message here today can be just one more perspective in the seeming perpetual fight to end that stigma. Now, before I get started, I was just talking to you, and I see you back there, Coach Keller. Let me quickly apologize to you, as I know how easily embarrassed you get when your name keeps getting brought up in public. You do have a massive part in these stories that I'm going to share, so your name is going to get said a lot, but I promise they're all fond memories, some of the greatest lessons I learned during my time here. But if you get too embarrassed, lunch is on me afterwards. So I got my foot in the door with Charles Schwab while I was actually studying abroad in Toledo, Spain, second semester junior year. My pledge brother Lars reached out to me via email while he was in Dubrovnik, Croatia, with a link to a job description and a message as something as simple as, "It ain't for me, but I think it's up your alley." I applied. 2 virtual interviews later, I had a job. Got the position as an apprentice, where I would work full-time over the summer months, and then commute to Indy 2 to 3 times a week, working 10 to 20 hours a week on a part-time basis, while I was finishing up my senior year here. Now, this job was nothing glamorous. Far from glamorous, in fact, as I was working in the Charles Schwab call center, taking inbound calls on an 800 number on the north side of Indy. But there was one particular day, as myself and 23 other new hires were being onboarded during our first 4 weeks that summer. We were going through our EDGE training, and this is an acronym that Schwab uses: Engage, Discover, Gain Commitment, and Enhance. Sort of a glide path for conversations with clients that they teach. The gentleman leading that particular day of our onboarding was new to us. It was our first time interacting with him, So of course we go through an icebreaker activity, blah, 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 as we already knew everything about each other. But as we go through yet another round of telling everyone in the room what superhero we would be and why, and yes, the answer is Captain America, defense is the best offense. Thank you. He finally opened up to us and told us all a little bit about himself. Initially, what he said next left everyone with a kind of, wow, this guy's a prick kind of reaction. But there was a takeaway that I've had that I've been able to reflect upon, sort of his underlying message. Here's what he said. I've been working for Schwab since 2011, and I love what I do, and I enjoy working for the company. I've already got a full slate of friends and family outside of work, so we will be nothing more than coworkers. In fact, if I see any of you in the streets or in public, please save yourself the embarrassment and just move on. If we see each other passing the halls while at work, I will likely not ask you what's up or how are you doing, because I do not care. I think that pretty much sums up what I had to say. Shall we get started? Okay, yeah, all right. Bit harsh to the ears, but in getting to know him a little more throughout that day and in training, come to find out he does have a very sarcastic personality, sense of humor to him. But what I took away from that particular moment was the importance to be intentional. Don't ask how you are doing if you're not ready to hear the answer. If you're going to ask the question, shouldn't you be ready to shut up and listen to what that person has to say? A genuine check-in with your fellow brothers and sisters is a healthy way to give each other the opportunity to be vulnerable, something that the Lord knows we need more of. Since then, I graduated from the call center. Something I wake up and thank God for every day. Now I get to work in a face-to-face role in Knoxville, where I ultimately hope to build, grow, and manage my own book of business with Schwab clients in the entire East Tennessee area. You see, my job is all about listening, something we dub as discovery in the industry. The goal? Get clients to open up and talk about themselves, discover their drivers, what makes them tick. After all, I'm a 24-year-old trying to give retirement advice to 60 and 70-year-olds. It's not that easy. The easy part of the job is the client's stated need, something they came to you for, and you have a reactive response to. But to be good at my job, my line of questioning and active listening need to allow me to discover my client's unstated and my client's emotional needs. This allows us to build the most important thing in the financial industry, trust. Something that Walt Bettinger, who's the Charles Schwab president and CEO, said and describes as, trust is something earned over time and lost in an instant. Professionally, this has been my biggest area of growth and definitely the most difficult. One of those areas that one will never perfect, but can always get better at. The simple act of asking a proper open-ended question, and during the inevitable awkward silence, and lending an ear to whoever you are talking to takes you a long way. So in summary of my Schwab experience, work has taught me to be intentional, and that the art of active listening can be used to uncover those needs and feelings that those who you are talking to might not even know that they have. Now for my time at Wabash here. The first one started 2.5 years ago at the soccer banquet. So Coach K, you've heard this, and seniors out there on the soccer team, you've also heard this story. But this is the story of the last time I was ever coached as a player on the soccer field. It's preseason against Manchester University. We're in our scrimmage game before my sophomore year. And we're playing periods instead of halves because it's preseason. I'm starting that day because senior and would-be starter Riley Pelton, we'll just say, wasn't on coach's good terms or good graces for some odd reason. So anyway, we're playing. There's probably about 7 minutes left in the first period here. I get the ball on the left side, I'm playing outside back. Francisco Trejo's the center mid and fellow Kappa Sig brother. He checks in. I pass him the ball and run by my defender. We do a give and go. I take a big touch. Now, when I take a big touch, I know I've got to bust it to get there and get there before Manchester steps in. But when I look up, I kid you not, Mike Alsott is barreling down on me, and I don't know what's coming to me. Like, no lie, this guy had no business being on a soccer field. But I stretch out to try to get there first. He slides in underneath me, takes me out, and I flip, land on my back, land on my head, complete the flip, and hit my head again. Now, I had 4 concussions in high school going into this, and I also fractured my back. The initial blow, I landed on my back, so that's what was hurting at first, what I thought was the injury. I stayed down a little bit and was just trying to loosen it up again. So Coach Keller comes out on the field. I stand up and we start walking it off and says, "Are you good to keep going? There's only 5 minutes left at this point." I say, "Yeah, I'll finish it out and let you know." So as we're walking off together, he just kind of puts his hand on my shoulder. He says, "You know, take a better touch next time and that won't happen." The last piece of coaching advice I ever got as a player, and Coach K basically told me to shut up and be better. And you know, that's fair enough. He wasn't wrong. That lesson that I learned just goes to show that sometimes you're plain and simple in life told to shut up and listen and take it. Take it on the chin. That leads into my second memory here, which just so happens to be a few days later, when I was able to get to the health center and see Dr. Roberts, who delivered the official diagnosis of a concussion. Concussion number 5, playing career over. Luckily, it's just a short walk downstairs and to Coach Keller's office, where I walked in unannounced and grabbed a seat and shared the news with him. Now, if you know Coach Keller, I promise, Coach, this is no jab back or shot back at you for that rude comment that you made to me years ago against Manchester. But you'll know that he's not necessarily the best at thinking on his toes or being put on the spot, especially in those tougher conversations. He's awkward, he gets all red in the face. Now I'll stop there because, again, I'm not trying to get back at you, I promise. But on that day, it was different. He knew exactly what to say. I didn't have much to say besides, well, it's over. Diagnosed concussion. Thanks for having me on the team and giving me the opportunity to be a part of it. Pretty clear, cut, and dry. But Coach listened to those words, and immediately, well, at least it seemed immediate. It really could have been 5 minutes, and I just don't remember. He picked up on my unstated and my emotional needs at the time, before I ever knew what those were. There was a pause, a silence. But with just the 2 of us in his office, he looked me dead in the eyes and said, "All right, sorry to hear that, but practice is still at 4:20 at Mud Hollow. I'll see you out there and let you announce it to the team in the huddle. I still want you to be a part of this team, and I know those guys do too." Now, I don't know if I should blame the concussion or how shocked I was to hear those well-thought-out words come out of Coach Keller's mouth in that situation. But I don't remember any further bit of that. You see, earlier I emphasized in my memory from the Manchester game that was my last time I was ever coached as a player. Coach Keller, did not care that I was no longer a player on his roster. He let me know he heard me, he was listening, and he refused to stop coaching me regardless. Some might say around here on this campus, that's the making of some little giant. Again, by listening to me and reading my demeanor, he knew exactly what I needed long before I knew. This then also gave me the opportunity to have the mic at practice, relay that same message to my brothers that I had been through some tough times with. I remember that preseason was a hot one. The fitness tests were grueling. Coach made sure we were working hard out there every day. Now the official season was set to get underway. Speaking out in the huddle that day, Coach Keller gave me the mic and let me be the one to talk. This was my time to talk and my teammates' time to shut up and listen. The ensuing support that I got from them that day and that day forward was why I came to Wabash in the first place. They all extended their hands to me, a fallen brother, made sure that I felt and stayed a part of that team. It's that Wabash soccer 1.5 mentality. Now, my last story, as I start wrapping up, comes from by far one of the hardest days of my life, and I think easily the hardest time I ever experienced at Wabash. September 10th, 2018, Monday. The soccer team was just coming off a 2-0 weekend in our own Robbie Dreher Classic, and we were fixing to play an always competitive opponent, Rose-Hulman, midweek on that Wednesday. Now, at this point, it's my senior year. I'm still with them as an undergrad assistant. I'd usually show up maybe 10, 15 minutes before practice started, lace up, maybe knock the ball around a little bit, or help coaches set up our warm-up drill. You'd be hard-pressed to walk up to practice and not see at least 2 soccer-tennis matches going. Guys on the far side of the field ripping free kicks with coach yelling at them to stretch instead of doing that. Laughter, banter, everything that you would expect out of a practice. But not on that day. I walked into those gates to Fisher Field and immediately knew something wasn't right. There was none of that happening. So I didn't stop quite dead in my tracks, but I definitely slowed my pace down, trying to absorb and take in the situation. So instead of lacing up like I always do, I walked straight to Coach Ian, cleats still in hand, and said, "Okay, something ain't right here. What's going on?" "Talk to Chris," was the response that I got. So Coach Keller was the one that broke the news to me that day as we were in a full embrace, the tragic news of Evan Hansen. We were all offered the opportunity to leave practice that day or not participate. But everyone stayed, found comfort in being around others who were also grieving. Time is a blur thinking back on it, so I really have no reference to know exactly how long the silence lasted. I'd guess maybe a week or so. The whole Wabash community was in shock. Whether it was the vibe around campus, personally me eating meals back at the Kappa Sig house, painting the bench in his memory, the candlelight vigil on the football field, you name it. All I remember is how quiet it was. And this is when I learned a very important lesson. This is when I learned that it's okay to shut up and listen to the silence. You see, it's also important to remember that it doesn't always come down to listening to others. Sometimes the toughest person to listen to is yourself. In this blur in time, the campus and Wabash community were processing their own feelings in this silence. so that when and as others were ready to start talking in the healing process, everyone could be more readily available and emotionally available for one another. And that's exactly what happened. Around campus, you started to see less individuals taking walks through the Arboretum or around campus. More and more groups of 2, 3, 4, 5 guys, brothers, who were all walking together, fighting the same fight, listening to one another, and letting each other know that they were being heard. One example of this is a story that I love thinking back on. And Emmy, I'm glad you're front and center for this. I was in the dining room of Kappa Sig, getting ready to eat dinner, when I got a random text message from Sawyer Donovan, who was a fellow Rhine brother of myself and Evan Hansen. Now this is, again, a blur in time, so maybe a week and a half to 2 weeks after we got the tragic news. The text, plain and simple, read, "Is Emiliano Delgado one of your pledges?" Now, I'm sure Sawyer did this accidentally. That's never a text that you want to get from someone that's in another fraternity house. I'm just thinking, oh great, what did he get caught stealing? What did this idiot do? And especially right now. So I confirmed with Sawyer. He was part of the Kappa Sig house and asked what's up. And Sawyer responded with quite a lengthy text. Now this was 3.5 years ago, so I no longer have it verbatim, but I will never forget the gist of it. It read something like this: "What a great dude. I was just sitting down to help him with his rhetoric outline and asked him if he had any questions before we got started. He said, in fact, I do. How are you doing? How are you holding up?" Bang. That's all it took. By being genuine and intentional, Sawyer was so moved by that gesture, that question, that he took the time out of his day to reach out to me and explain what happened. Now, also granted, this is a freshman, Emmy, who had come to Wabash from El Paso, Texas, and had been on campus for what? Maybe 2 months at that point? Didn't know E-Train whatsoever, but knew that there were people around him that did, and that were grieving, and that needed to be heard. So, Emmy, I thanked you then, and I thank you again now. So it was kind of funny looking back on all these memories and lessons, and realizing how they were all kind of tragic or sad in their own ways, but how I think about them also fondly now. So all of this to say, whether you are in a stage where it's time to shut up and listen, or if it's time to be heard, or if you're still listening to the silence, just know it's okay. There's a time and a place for all of it. Now, when it's time to shut up and listen, be genuine and intentional. Be available. Don't always let it come to you. Reach out and check on one another. When it's time to be heard, be a man. Reach out and ask for help. Reach out to those you trust and those around you. Share the good. Share the bad. And when you do find yourself listening to the silence, it's important to remember that you do have the support system on the other side. And if the silence grows too loud, becomes too daunting or too challenging, it is okay to ask for help without having your own emotions or feelings fully processed. Now, I could be some schlub and stand up here and ask you to repeat this commitment after me. I'm definitely not going to do that. This is not my commitment to force on anyone. This is a commitment that comes to you on your own time, when you're ready to make it to yourself and to make it to those around you. But this right here is my commitment to the Wabash community, brothers and sisters alike, because I believe in it and I stand by it. I will be there for all of you, for whatever you need and whenever you ask for it. And if I do ask you how you're doing, it will be because I care. No matter what it is, how big or small, good or bad, I will always lend an ear to you. Wabash always fights, and my favorite always means always. Thank you, Wabash.